Hello. In this final video, what we're going to do is we're going to wrap things up and get this search button to work. And what the search button will do is if you type a country in here and hit submit, it will actually pull up the image if it exists. So just a reminder, in our last video, what we did was we got this next button and this previous button to work, so we can cycle through our images. But what we're going to do in this video is if I come up here and I type in, say, Canada, and I hit submit, it will pop to that image directly. If I put in USA, and I hit submit, it pops to that image. But if I put in something like Japan, which I haven't put an image in for, I hit submit, nothing. Now, of course, you could do something interesting like, and this might be an interesting next step, is to put some image that represents not being able to find it. And that's a nice thing to do for yourself when you're done to see if this all makes sense to you. All right, with that said, let's dive in. So what I need to do is, again, this is all about binding. A lot of the conversations that this came from is this idea of binding a function to some object in a web page. And what we're going to bind in this case is we're going to bind a function to this submit button. So when I click it, it's going to run some function, which is essentially going to find or check to see if that country we've typed in is there, and if it is, update the image and the text. All right, so let's do that. So I'm going to come down here. I just need to take a second. Okay, I've just cleaned things up a little bit here. So down here is what we wrote before was the next and previous button. This is when the page loads. And these are a couple of variables we're going to need access to for our search button. So what's the first thing I'm going to do? Well, I'm going to just write a simple function, and I'm going to call that function clicked. And all we're going to do is we're going to say console.log clicked. I always like to make sure that the function is working before I do anything else. One of the things that young programmers do is they try and write a whole bunch of code before testing, and it becomes really hard to debug. So I really do recommend that you write a small chunk of code, test it, and continually kind of testing your code as you go along. All right, so what we want to do is we want to grab this submit button and we want to bind that function to it. So let's take a look and find that submit, and there it is right here. And what we can do here is we can give this an ID. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say ID equals, and I'm going to say submit. So now if I come down here, what I can do is I'm going to say submit btn, or let's say var submit btn equals, I'm going to say document.get element by ID, and we gave that element the submit. And then I'm going to say submit btn dot, and we're going to say on click, and we're going to bind it to the clicked function. Oh, no brackets. So now if I've done this correctly, and I come back here and I run this, so let's reload it, and I hit submit. Actually, let's pull up our console. There it is down here. I should see clicked. There it is. So every time I hit click, it shows it. So what do I have to do now? I need to access whatever is inside this box, and then I need to check inside my list to see if that country exists. And that's what we're going to do next. Okay. So we're going to come in now into the clicked function, which I've written here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to access that value. I'm going to access the value that's contained inside this box, and then we'll do a little test. So if I come in here, here's my click function, I'm going to say var, and I'm going to call this input value, and I'm going to say document.get element by ID. And the thing is, let's check if have I given that entry box an ID value yet. So let's look, and sure enough I haven't, so I'm going to say ID, and we're going to give that the ID of input. So I'm going to come back down here, and I'm going to say document get element by ID input, and so now I have access to that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the value right into that right away, and I'm going to pull that value by doing this. So let's just do this, console.log, and we're going to log the value, the input value. So what this does is it makes a variable called input value we get the element by ID, input, and then we actually access the value for that. So if we come back in and we reload this page, if I put in something like Canada and I hit submit, I get Canada. So notice whatever I type in the box here, fish food, and I hit submit, I get fish food, which works great. Now, one of the things that I want to do, because I want it to account for case sensitivity here, I can use a built-in function here called toUppercase. Now I'm going to do this on a separate line, so I'm going to say input value is equal to input value dot toUppercase. And you'll notice here that, notice I've written all of these countries in capitals. And so if I save this now and give it another run, notice if I put Canada like that and I hit submit, notice it capitalizes the word. So this is just all I'm doing, is I'm just using this built-in function toUppercase that capitalizes whatever the input value is. So the next step, and let's come down here. So the next step is I need to loop through the countries array or list, I keep calling it array, and check to see if the country is there. If the country is there, we load the image. So how do we do that? Well, remember, this is a really important algorithm, and one of the most important things to take away from this is this idea of a for loop. So we're going to write a for loop that's going to go from index 0 to the length -1. And this idea of a for loop transcends all programming languages. Well, there's some that don't have for loops, but any of the ones that you're probably dealing with, Python, Java, JavaScript, all of them you have a for loop. So for, and we're going to say I equals 0, so we're going to start off at the 0th index, and we're going to say I is less than. And remember, I've stored the length of countries in that variable length, or len, so I'm going to say len, and I'm going to say I is equal to I plus 1. So this is that idea of count, check, change. And so now what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to say if countries at I is equivalent to, and we're going to use 3 equal signs, the input value, I'm going to print, sorry, wrong language, console.log, found it. So let's just see what happens here. So if I come in here and I reload this page and I put in Canada, I should get found it. Sure enough, I do. If I put in Japan and I hit submit, I don't get found it because Japan is not on the list. So this is what's called a linear search. There it is. This is what's called a linear search. It's the process of going through each element in the list and then checking if it is what we're looking for. So what do we do now? Well, I'm going to take image. Remember, we have access to the image object. We stored it in a variable called image, and I'm going to say src. Just to remind you, we did that right here in our previous video. Image, and then I'm going to say equals to, and I'm just actually going to take and copy this, and I'm going to paste that. And remember, we found the index at I, so we're going to set it to images at I. And now I have to change index equals to I. The reason I have to do this is because, remember, my next and previous buttons are based on that index value. So when I want to jump to a different photo, I have to reset index. So let's give this a save. Let's jump in here. Let's reload it. And our next and previous buttons still work. But if I put in USA here and I hit submit, it kind of works. Do you see what doesn't work? My mouse is right on it. I haven't updated the name of the country. That's an easy enough fix. So we're just going to come in here, and I'm going to right here, and I'm going to say country.innerHTML is equal to, and I'm going to set equal to countries at I. COUNTR. There we go. And that's it. So let's reload this page. Let's put in USA and hit submit. There we go. Let's put in Canada and hit submit. Perfect. Let's put in China and hit submit. Nothing happens. And like I said, what might be a fun little kind of next step for you to try is get another photo and make it a default photo if a country isn't found. And then you can load that and maybe a message that says country not found. with that said, I think we're going to wrap up now. Thank you very much for watching the video, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask. Have a lovely day.